Hi everyone, here's the Book Chemist once again, and today I'm reviewing Carlos Ruiz Zafón's Cemetery of Forgotten Books book series. Loved by readers across the world, Shadow of the Wind in particular is a personal favorite among many dedicated readers. I read that one last year and reviewed it on the channel. I'm not going to talk much about it today. I'm going to put a link to my review of Shadow of the Wind at the top of this video in the description box. Suffice it to say that I really loved The Shadow of the Wind. I still think about it quite often. It's a beautiful mystery story with a very compelling game of stories within stories going on, and a few really interesting and stimulating reflections about what it means to love books and grow up as a passionate reader. If nothing else, the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series, these books are all the work of somebody who clearly is a passionate reader and a great fan and appreciator of literature. But what about the rest of the series? If The Shadow of the Wind remains the best of the four books and the one I would recommend most readers really looking for a good read, The Angel's Game is definitely the most pleasurable experience I had with the series, the most enjoyable. It spoke to me with some elements of its plot, with its genre, with the way it mixes its mysterious elements with the reflections of a compelling narrator who talks about the craft of writing, the difficulties and complexities and struggles of being a writer, and it mixes all this with some truly fascinating supernatural or borderline supernatural elements, and with a really sinister but compelling basis for this plot, which follows a writer who's commissioned to write the founding text of a new religion. Angel's Game is very much of an open-ended mystery, and for this reason I believe it might frustrate some readers, but if you're cool with that, if you're cool with the idea that maybe you won't get to know all of the answers to the mysteries and the enigmas that are raised by the book's plot, then this is the book for you, and it can be truly and really fun. If anything, I've spoken about this in the past. I believe that when supernatural elements are involved in narratives like this, giving a very detailed and very clean explanation to them kind of takes all the fun away. Leaving a certain degree of openness and uncertainty about them is what makes them stick to your mind and stimulates your imagination long after you've finished reading the book. The Prisoner of Heaven feels like a tribute to the literature that Zafón clearly loves and influenced the series, and in particular it feels like a tribute to Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo. The book gives the reader an overdose of Fermin, the character who offered the main comic relief in The Shadow of the Wind, and who he looks at times as a stereotypical Spaniard. He definitely has a passion for earthly activities, for eating, for lovemaking, and at times he reads almost like a Shakespearean fool, somebody who's clearly quite silly but yet sometimes pulls off the type of philosophical reasoning that puzzles much wiser men. It is by far the least ambitious of the four novels. It doesn't try to do anything cute with the way the events are presented, with complicating the narrator's take on and relationship to the narrated events. It does feature a bit of those stories within stories sort of narrative structure that Zafón likes so much, but mostly what it is, it's just a truly entertaining adventure story with some very interesting mysteries and some truly despicable characters. Because Fermin is such a larger-than-life character, he will come across as impossibly annoying to some readers. At times he does feel like so much of a pest. But if you enjoyed his shenanigans in Shadow of the Wind, if you didn't have a problem with that, I feel like you could have a great time with Prisoner of Heaven. It's a really fun adventure story, and I enjoyed reading it very much. Which leaves us with The Labyrinth of Spirits, the fourth book in the series, which I must admit is the only book in the series I actively disliked. Not entirely, there are some truly beautiful turns of phrase in here, and in the passages, in the parts where the narrative gains momentum, the book can be as entertaining and as thrilling as the other books in the series, but I had several issues with it that in many ways ruined my enjoyment of the book. All the books in the series are set in a fascinating, sinister film noir Barcelona from the years of the fascist regime of Franco. And all of them deal with the difficulties of intellectuals, book lovers specifically, but artists and readers and critics and journalists in general, under this regime. And the problem I'm going to talk about also appears at times in the other books, but I felt like it was most perceivable in here. The book it's quite uncommitted when it comes to politics. It describes the struggle of intellectuals in the years of the Civil War and under the regime that followed the Civil War, and some of these intellectuals regret not joining the fight against the fascists, but there is a general sense in the book that all of the factions, all of the sides involved in the Civil War were equally guilty and equally to blame. I won't go into too much detail in this issue because it's an incredibly complicated one and I'm far from an expert on Spanish history, but this attitude of non-commitment, it felt, on the one hand, it felt very much like a form of populism, of this populist attitude of, oh, why choose, they're all crooked anyway. And on the other end, I'm not saying that Zafón has to be politically committed or has to make a strong statement. He can do, it's his book, he can do whatever the hell he wants. But I'm always reminded of the third canto in Dante's Inferno about the Ignavi, about the people who didn't choose a faction in life, who chose non-commitment instead of choosing an idea and supporting it. And they are the worst, the lowest criminals in hell. They are so low that they're even denied access to hell and they're forever condemned to wander outside the gates of it. I did have a feeling that the Labyrinth of Spirits at times committed that sin of Ignavia, of non-commitment. The other problem I had was with its portrayal of women in this book, and now that I think back to it, probably in the rest of the series, they're often depicted in rather almost caricatural terms. They're either angelic women or doomed femme fatales who are highly sexualized, and inevitably they become the interest of their men and the other male characters, but only occasionally they feel like convincing human characters. A sub-problem, a sub-issue I had with this revolved around the portrayal of Alicia, the main character in the book, in the Labyrinth of Spirits. She is described as this dark woman, as this fallen angel, this vampire, this doomed creature, but at the end of the day, she comes across as a rather reasonable, sensible person. She has a physical handicap and is in constant pain because of it, but other than that, I couldn't really find any trace of the supposed moral failings or compromise that would make her this kind of fallen woman. The only thing that made her that kind of, trope, that kind of character of the dark woman, was possibly the way she dressed and the way men look at her in the course of the novel. But for all that the novel spent a long time trying to convince you that Alicia is this kind of fallen angel, I couldn't really find any evidence of that in the character's development itself. The last problem I had with the book is that large portions of it felt quite pointless on a very basic narrative level. The entire first half of the book felt like it was quite unnecessary. It doesn't even set the stage for the events very well. The events of the first half aren't that very relevant to the second half, if not marginally. A lot of the secondary characters that are introduced in here serve no purpose whatsoever. The final section with Julian, Daniel's son, writing the story with Julian Carax, again, didn't convince me, didn't feel like it had its purpose in the broader narrative. That part didn't feel like it was justified in the book at large. Overall, it was an 800-page novel that felt like it should really just have been as long and as fast as The Prisoner of Heaven. Maybe it was overly ambitious, maybe I just didn't connect with the way Zafón was trying to tie up the entire series and bring the many strands of the previous 3 books together. Maybe it was just too ambitious a plan to try and draw a tidy conclusion to the entire thing. I wasn't convinced, and I'm not saying this to diss Zafón. If I'm talking at such length about it, it's because I liked the previous 3 books in the series, and so I'm speaking as somebody who was disappointed in the 4th one, but who's very much looking forward to discussing it, the Labyrinth of Spirits and the other books, with you guys. I know the series has many fans across the world, it's a bestseller. I wonder if you were satisfied with the Labyrinth of Spirits, maybe reading it when it came out, after waiting so many years for a conclusion to the series. Maybe it was a different experience, maybe it justified the ambitiousness and the scope and the size of the novel. What did you think about the other ones? Is there any of the 4 that you really dislike? Do you hate that Fermin guy? Let me know in the comments. I really look forward to discussing the series with you. Thank you as always for watching the video, and bye people.